All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
When most people think of DC in relation to a movie or a TV show, they mostly have two paradigms in mind. Either DC is the West Wing, where people are legitimately trying to do good, they're the best and the brightest, or they're House of Cards, conniving, evil, corrupt folks running the country to their own ends with a real plot. But after being here for more than a decade, I can assure you that while these people would run the country like House of Cards if they could, that they are far too stupid and idiotic to do so. The only show that has ever captured Washington at all is Veep, and that's what it feels like I've been living in since Donald Trump came to office, especially in the latest announcement, of which has garnered a lot of attention. Both dangerous on its face, but also revelatory in who exactly the regime enforcers are of today. The Department of Homeland Security announced Thursday afternoon the Biden administration would be launching a so-called Disinformation Governance Board. Well, according to the DHS, the board's job will be to counter dangerous disinformation that is being pushed by Russia and pushed towards migrants in South America making their way to the US border. Oh, well, I mean, as somebody eminently skeptical of a censorship regime, when I hear disinformation, I automatically ask, well, will you censor establishment disinformation too? But on its face, what they listed sounds kinda reasonable, right? Until you get to this part. The board will be led by one Nina Jankowicz. She is quote-unquote disinformation expert. I'm already skeptical. Any so-called disinformation expert is bound to be bad. But guys, it is so much worse than you could possibly imagine. Let's start with possibly the most egregious act of political censorship in my lifetime, the removal of the Hunter Biden laptop story by Twitter at the height of the 2020 presidential election. Here's what Ms. Jankowicz said at the time, quote, "She both distributed articles claiming that the Hunter Biden laptop story was a Russian plant and reiterated lies that the US intelligence community believed that the Kremlin is the one responsible for the Hunter Biden laptop story." So, on the most egregious act of disinformation pushed by the press, the head of the United States government's new disinformation board herself fell for, promoted, and distributed straight-up disinformation. That's dystopian. It actually gets worse. It turns out that this woman is a cringe, dyed-in-the-wool establishment liberal. Jankowicz was one of the carnival barkers online who claimed that Glenn Greenwald and Tucker Carlson are responsible for harassment against activist journalist Taylor Lorenz simply because they literally said her name while criticizing her in public. And her publicly published work on national television. Then, at the height of COVID, the new disinformation head showed us exactly why we shouldn't have censorship in the first place. Back when Fauci was telling us masks don't work, she called for the advertising industry to stop placing ads on masks and stop spreading the disinformation that masks work against coronavirus. Less than 2 weeks later, she tweeted, quote, "America is, quote, too free-spirited, and that social distancing won't work unless forced upon us. So force us away. Lock us down. People are not taking this seriously." She literally wrote that. And last, but certainly not least, beyond her terrible views, I regret to inform you, Nina Jankowicz is also a theater kid freak who apparently never grew up. Here is her in all her glory earlier this year.
Pondering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie when Rudy Giuliani shared that intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain.
Yeah, it's real, and that was only half of it. I couldn't even make everyone suffer through the full thing. Now I have some sympathy. I was a theater kid too, but I was mugged by reality. And by the time that you get to her age, that should be stamped out. She also, and I promise you, I am not kidding, was very into, quote, wizard rock, aka Harry Potter inspired bands, and took the stage to sing Nevertheless I Persisted in a Harry Potter homage to Elizabeth Warren in the 2010s. That is the woman who is now in charge of determining what is disinformation and what is not for the US government. Do you have confidence in her? I think I'm just giving you a compelling case, but let's just say you agree. Okay, but then consider the consequences of the Steve Bannon-led Disinformation Governance Board. You still okay with that? Because that is what democratic turnover of government would look like. I have a better idea. These people should have no say whatsoever about disinformation, period. The US government itself has been one of the most ardent and pernicious purveyors of disinformation in the 21st century, which exactly demonstrates my point. The fusion of the so-called experts with the tech censors, and now the government has formed a new disinformation industrial complex whose sole job is to pump out disinformation that is comfortable for the elite ruling class and to cover up and censor any efforts at holding them accountable. When you target them, it's harassment. When they target you, they're doing their civic duty. The only hope we may have is that Ms. Jankowicz is so incompetent she is not capable to oppress us. The most likely scenario, actually. But we should not have to put our faith in the fecklessness of our elites to ensure our freedom. It should actually be up to us instead. And the slow march to some so-called Ministry of Truth is exactly the threat to civil liberties that was once recognized for what it is. Another step towards a completely authoritarian society. So Crystal, really what I'm saying is I'm calling for a total and complete shutdown of theater kids.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.